Teen Wolf the movie picks up 13 years after the events of the series ended, and Liam is now living in Japan with his girlfriend, Hikari Zhang, and they work out of a ramen bar. A man comes in looking for a jar with a triskelion on it that contains the remains of the Nogitsune, and a huge fight breaks out, and Hikari flees with the jar while Liam fights. Liam jumps at the man and he is shot in midair, and the man then takes out Hikari. He grabs the jar and says he wants retribution against Scott McCall and his friends, and then lets the Nogitsune flies free. We then jump to Beacon Hills, where Scott now runs an animal shelter, and he goes to save a young girl and a dog from a collapsing building. They bandage the dog up at the clinic, and after the family leaves, Scott has a vision of Allison, but then she disappears. He still loves her even though she hasn't been on the show for 3 seasons. Then out of nowhere, Argent pops out and scares Scott. Argent looks frightened, and he tells Scott he's seeing her too. He's been having vivid nightmares about her and keeps hearing the word bardo, which he tells Scott is a concept of a place between life and death. Scott doesn't understand, and Argent says he believes Allison is still out there. He wants to conduct some ritual that believes will bring her back, but says they will need Scott's old pack. We then jump over to Lydia, who is now some hotshot businesswoman, but one day in her office, she starts having visions of Allison, and then something takes over her and she starts scribbling on a ton of paper. Elsewhere, a kid sneaks into a car pound and steals Styles' Jeep, but Parrish sees him when he drives by. Then over to a police scene, and Mason is now a cop, and we learn the kid that just stole the Jeep is Derek Hale's son, Eli Hale, but they have a strained relationship to say the least. Back over to Scott, who goes with Lydia to the place Allison died to get a handful of dirt they need for the ritual. They go to Scott's house to look at the drawings Lydia made, and then Jackson shows up and says Lydia asked for his help. Jackson puts all the drawings together, and it turns out to be the base of the Nemeton, with the word bardo in the middle of it. At Derek's house, he and Eli are fighting because Eli's werewolf powers haven't showed up yet, and it's making him a little feisty. He doesn't want to be the only Hale to never be a werewolf. Out in the woods, Lydia and Scott meet up with Malia to look for the Nemeton, and things are awkward between Malia and Scott because they broke up a decade ago, shortly after the series ended. And she is now in a friends-with-benefit relationship with Parrish. While looking for the tree, Scott catches Eli following them, and when he confronts him, Eli says he can help them find the tree. And he very well leads them to it. Malia then tells Eli to scram. Lydia starts the ritual, and then the sword they brought that killed Allison gets a mind of its own and jams into the Nemeton. The wind picks up, and then the sword is swallowed by the tree, and Lydia thinks they failed. As they walk away, the tree starts lighting up, and Allison's body appears, and they take her to the hospital. But while they're doing that, the Nogitsune flies show up at the Nemeton, and the Nogitsune is resurrected. At the hospital, while Melissa is talking with the trio, Allison gets up and leaves her bed. Scott goes looking for her, but she made her way to the break room and steals someone's clothes out of a locker. She is confused and doesn't know who anyone is, not even Scott. She asks where the Alpha is, but she's not talking about Scott, she's talking about Derek Hale. She then runs into her father, but she is still confused and runs out of the building the other way. Deaton then tells Scott Allison isn't the only one back from the dead, the Nogitsune is too. At the police station, when only one officer is there, the Nogitsune shows up and takes Ninetails from the cop there, who also is a Kitsune. He wants to use the Ninetails to summon 9 Oni and be their leader. Outside the hospital, everyone is discussing Allison and realize that she remembers werewolves and being a werewolf hunter, but doesn't remember any of them. Not even her dad and Derek could be in danger, as Allison thinks he's the Alpha in Beacon Hills. In the tunnel system, Allison is confronted by the Nogitsune, who says he is on her side and they must kill Scott McCall, and she says she doesn't know who that is. The Nogitsune says she will soon, and when the creature takes the form of Allison's mother, she says the Oni will fight with them too, and they must rid Beacon Hills of all werewolves. So apparently Allison remembers her mother, but not her father. At the high school, Eli and Derek are talking about the lacrosse game, until Allison shows up and starts shooting arrows at Derek, and he can't believe his eyes that Allison is alive. Allison hits him in the neck, but when she goes for the kill shot, Liam and Hikari show up to stop her. Hikari is revealed to be a Kitsune as well. When Scott runs in the hall, he sees Liam and Hikari, who tell him about the Nogitsune and the Oni and how they're on their way. Out in the woods, while investigating a forest fire, the Oni show up and attack the sheriff along with all of his deputies. Scott and Malia take Derek's body to Derek's house in hopes of Deaton healing him, but while in the living room, Peter appears and uses a blowtorch to heal and shut Derek's wound. Scott says they have to find Eli because Allison will be after him, thinking he is a werewolf because she saw him with Derek at the school. On his way out, Melissa tells him to get Allison to remember and how love is a strong thing. Over to Eli, who makes his way to his family's auto shop, but Allison shows up as well, looking to kill. At the police station, Lydia, Jackson, Liam, and Hikari find the dead Kitsune, and Hikari says the Nogitsune killed him to steal his tails, which allow him to control the Oni, similar to how Kira's mom did in the series. Back to the auto shop, and Allison finds and starts fighting with Eli, and when she's about to shoot him with an arrow, Scott opens the garage door and tells her to stop. He deflects an arrow, she shoots and then grabs Eli and runs. They hide and Scott roars, hoping to wake up the inner werewolf in Eli, and his eyes turn yellow and his cut heals. So he's a werewolf after all. Scott tells Eli to go to his house and be with his dad, and he wants to try and get through to Allison. He tries talking with her, but she just keeps shooting silver arrows at him. At Scott's house, after Eli gets back, the Oni show up as well. A cool montage then shows the Oni capturing many people, including Liam, Hikari, the sheriff, Deaton, Derek, and Eli. Meanwhile, Allison is still hunting Scott, and he's trying to talk some sense in her the whole time, hoping she will remember him. Scott purposefully makes her stab him, hoping it will awaken something in her. But they're gone when Argent, Peter, and Melissa show up, and Peter says there's blood with wolfsbane on the ground, and Argent says Scott will only have 8 hours at most unless treated. Allison is forcing Scott to go to a location to use him as a lure for the other werewolves. But Scott continues to try telling her this isn't who she is, and the Nogitsune is putting these thoughts into her head. She's slowly starting to listen to him and realize he isn't the bad guy here. He's not a killing machine like she thought. Meanwhile, everyone that was taken by the Oni wakes up tied up in some foggy graveyard. Back to Scott and Allison, and Scott tells Allison how she died in his arms, and he says he's gonna die soon unless the wolfsbane is treated. Elsewhere, a lacrosse tournament is being held at a local college, and the man from the beginning of the movie is pouring mountain ash around the whole stadium, so he and the Nogitsune have something planned to go down. At the bunker, Scott gets Allison to look at an old picture of them, and it brings back memories of him and Lydia, and it's all starting to connect in her head. She asks what she has to do to save him, and he says she has to burn out the wolfsbane. She then grabs a flare and burns it out of him, which saves his life. Scott looks out the window and realizes they are right next to the lacrosse pitch. Back at the foggy graveyard, the Nogitsune starts messing with Derek and Eli, and then he throws Eli back into the real world and he pops out on the lacrosse field and Scott sees him. Lydia finds the mountain ash barrier around the stadium, and she tells Jackson the Nogitsune isn't just using the ash as a barrier, but a gateway between his world and theirs. When Scott and Eli try to leave the stadium, the barrier prevents them from doing so, and then the hooded man takes off his hood and Lydia and Jackson see it's Adrian Harris, their old chemistry teacher. He's there to get payback on all of them for offering him up as a sacrifice to a demented druid all those years ago. Argent and Melissa then arrive at the stadium, and Argent finds Allison, and she says she doesn't remember everything, but it's all starting to come back. But then the Oni show up and take her and Scott to their world. A huge fight breaks out between the Oni. Scott and Allison and Harris forces Lydia to watch, hoping Allison and Scott will die. Jackson tells Lydia to banshee scream, and when she does, it knocks all of the Oni back, and the scream causes Allison to remember everything about her life. The Nogitsune then shows up and threatens to kill Eli. Scott says this all centers around him and he will sacrifice himself if everyone else can go free. The Nogitsune says if Allison is the one to kill him, he will let everyone else free. Scott tells her to do it and she listens and shoots him many times, paining her to do it every time. The Nogitsune tells the Oni to let the others go, but when he does that, Scott burns the arrows out of his heart, and it turns out Hikari transferred her foxfire to him to protect him, and then the fox goes back to her. Harris then opens the portal between the worlds, and in comes Argent, Melissa, and Peter. While he's distracted, Lydia subdues Harris and takes his gun from him. The Nogitsune then takes off the bandages and is ready to fight, and Scott, Derek, and Eli attack. Harris jumps in and tries to burn the Nogitsune dead, but can't hold him by himself, and Derek sacrifices himself to save Eli and Scott. Everyone then finds themselves back on the lacrosse field, and Allison and Scott share a kiss. The movie ends with everyone getting together to honor the fallen werewolf, Derek Hale. And that is how the Teen Wolf saga ends. Thanks for watching.